Are you looking to add a little shape morphing delight to your Wear OS apps? If so, you are in the right place. In this episode, you'll learn how to implement these cool new effects with Compose Material 3. If you previously tried implementing a shape morphing effect in Compose, you may notice that it usually requires many lines of code. This example shows how to manually implement shape morph between a triangle and a square. And then you need to also implement the animation between these two. In this example, we perform an infinite morphing animation between the two. But a lot of the time, we'd also like to tie into the interaction source for button press morphing. It is quite a lot of code for this effect. But today, I have not just one, but two pieces of good news for you. The first one is that you can now bring the cool shape morphing effect into your Wear OS apps with the new Compose Material 3 for Wear OS, adding a delightful touch to your UI. The second one is that there are a number of Compose Material 3 components that greatly simplify implementing shape morphing on Wear OS. Let's explore some way to use those. First, round buttons. Components like icon, text, icon toggle, and text toggle buttons support variations that animate when pressed or checked. In this example, notice how the play button morphs its shape when pressed. Next, we'll dive into the button group, a new Material 3 component that implements an expressive group of buttons in a row that shape morph when touched. And finally, TransformingLazyColumn, a new lazy vertically scrolling list that can be used to apply scaling and morphing animations to elements in the list. So the height and width of the items morph as they get closer to the top and bottom screen edges. Let's look at some code now. Field icon button is one of the round buttons in Compose we'll use. You can add shape morphing by simply using the animated shapes method from the icon button defaults. And by simply adding this single line of code, you can get a fun shape morphing button like the one in this example. The second component we want to look at is button group. In a button group, you can nest multiple buttons, so in this case, we will use two field icon buttons. To add shape morphing, you need to declare an interaction source for each button. In this sample, we have two buttons, one for play and one for adding to queue. So we are adding two interaction sources. And then we use the animated width modifier to add the interaction source, which will adjust the width of the button based on user interaction. Note that this modifier is only available within a button group scope. The last step is to set the interaction source to the one we have created above, for observing and emitting interaction for this button. With all of that in place, now the two buttons inside the button group change width based on the interaction source. Button group allows you to quickly add shape morphing effects with three quick steps: creating an interaction source for each button, using the animate width modifier, and setting the interaction source parameter. The last component for today is TransformingLazyColumn, a new component from 1.5 Compose for Wear OS beta release. With it, you can apply morphing effects to the elements in the list. Height and width of the elements can morph as the items get closer to the top and bottom screen edges. First step is to create a transformation spec, which defines visual transformation of the item of a TransformingLazyColumn. Here, we are using Remember Transformation Spec, which remembers a responsive transformation spec for us. Then, for each item of the list, you use modifier transformed height to calculate the changed height that will be passed into the TransformingLazy scope based on the transformation spec. Lastly, you set the transformation creating a new surface transformation. This will cause the container of the component to dynamically change content separately from the background. Finally, this is the end result. The list items shrink in height and width when approaching the top and bottom edges of the screen. This was quick. We used a computed transformation spec. If you feel more creative, you can take it a step further and create a custom transformation spec for a transforming lazy column. For customizing a transformation spec, first you create and remember a transformation spec as we did before. And then use the Kotlin's delegation feature, creating a new object that implements the transformation spec interface. You then override the apply container transformation based on the scroll progress of the list. Here we are trying to rotate the list items as they approach the bottom of the screen. But you could also change the shape if you want to morph into a different shape while scrolling. As before, we use modifier transformed height to calculate and pass the height of the item to the transforming lazy scope, based on the transformation spec. Then, we use the graphic layer to apply effects to content. Note that since we want to rotate both the button and the text inside it, we apply the effect also at the text component. And that's it. You get a custom transformation that makes the bottom list item rotate as it approaches the end of the screen. We hope that today's episode inspired you to add more delightful shape morphing to your Wear OS apps with Compose, by using components such as round buttons, the button group, and the transforming lazy column. For more information, check out the linked documentation. Happy composing!